Good morning, y'all. Josh with Severe Weather. Happy Friday to you. We are now getting through the first week of the year of 2023. And to recap, we've had 14 severe weather, severe thunderstorm, and tornado watches showing the start of what's going to be a very active late winter and spring tornado season. But I want to talk to you guys about winter weather and what to expect here in the next coming week. So I'm going to share my screen with you. And if you could subscribe to my YouTube channel, I'm going to give you guys more updates as we get closer to next week here. You've heard me talk about it yesterday, but we are watching the potential for a significant storm moving into the eastern United States at the end of next week, so about a week from today, and intensifying off the East Coast next weekend. Now, we are still about a week out from this potential event. We know there will be a storm, but the big question mark on everybody's mind is, will it snow in my backyard? And I do not have a clear answer for that, not because I'm a meteorologist and I lie to you, but there's just not a high enough skill level in predicting something so major in an area that doesn't get a lot of snow, especially here in a La Nina year, where La Nina typically leads to a milder weather pattern over the southeast and up the east coast as well. What I do know is that we will have intensifying low pressure that will be moving towards the Carolina coastline at the very end of next week into the weekend, and then moving east or northeast and maybe getting close to the New England coastline by the very end of next weekend and the following Monday. That would put us in the 8 to 10 day window as far as forecasting goes. What we don't know, though, is will this storm come closer to the coast and produce more wintry weather across the interior of the Northeast, maybe even the big cities? Or will it stay off the East Coast and batter the Carolinas and Virginia with pounding rain, surf, and wind? I think both options are on the table, but I'm going to tell you why I think the second option is more likely to occur. This is kind of a general rule of thumb for winter weather forecasting, especially in the eastern and southern United States. I wouldn't use this in the West because we know we're going to have winter weather there, especially this week. But we're getting into that 7-8 day time frame where we're just still recognizing the weather patterns to see if there will be favorable enough weather for winter weather. For that, you're going to need some form of blocking off the East Coast that will allow a storm to maybe come up the East Coast if you're in the Northeast, or you're going to need some sort of block farther to the south where we're going to have a significant enough low pressure system that's going to strengthen and produce heavier precipitation rates. Meaning we need a storm to strengthen rather than weaken off of the Carolina coast to see maybe more significant precipitation. We also need cold air in place, and that is the one thing that I'm going to be watching because I've seen different looks from different models as to whether or not it will be cold enough. If you stepped outside this morning, you know it's chillier here in the east and south. However, this is kind of more seasonable weather, and typically it doesn't snow in the southeast. We do get some snow over the winter, sometimes multiple storms, but if you take the average of every winter, it's less likely to happen than more likely to happen. I think that's pretty much common sense. So as we get into the weekend and early next week, we're going to have a better feel for the trends as to if it will be getting colder or if the storm track may come farther north. Or if it'll go out to sea and just be a primarily rain event with maybe some elevational snow. So that's what I'm going to be watching for you guys here over the next week. Here is a look at weatherbell.com. I'm going to show you guys the storm track and what has changed over the last day. So this is the end of the weekend. We have a weak storm moving through the midsection of the country. There will be some light wintry weather over the mid-Atlantic region. Not a big snowfall by any stretch. The Canadian says a little snow can fall in DC, which would be our first snowfall, but primarily rain across the Tennessee Valley, Carolinas, and Southeast. This should not be a significant weather maker, although there will be a few thunderstorms on the central Gulf Coast. This is coming from the push of moisture that has come through the Rockies from our big atmospheric river on the West Coast. You heard me talking about the bomb cyclone that is starting to weaken and pull up into the Pacific parts of Canada, but we will have yet another storm kind of following the same track, and it looks like it's going to stay busy. Now, what's going to change next week? You guys will notice these blue lines aloft. These show cooler sources of air. You can see kind of a moderate sized high pressure system over the Northwest Territory and Nunavut, Canada. That is going to start to spread south and east. You'll see colder air moving into eastern Canada at the middle of next week. The big question mark is how far south does that dip? Because we are going to have a storm that will form here over the plains by the Wednesday night, Thursday timeframe. The big question for that is how far south and east is that low going to get pushed by this cold air mass? The Canadian model is now showing what the European showed yesterday, but the GFS model continues to be on its own with a more northern track. I'm going to show you all of those just so you can see. This is not an official forecast, but the model does show a winter storm for the Western Carolinas and Virginia and the mountains of West Virginia and far eastern Tennessee Friday into Friday night, Saturday, and even into the early part of Sunday, where we could have significant snow and sleet across the mountains. However, this low pressure track is so close to the coast that we're looking at primarily rain for the big cities. And with this high pressure in place over New England, it's too dry to get that storm track to bring enough moisture into New England. There may be some light precipitation, but the storm is pretty much blocked by this high pressure system on Saturday night and Sunday. It will eventually try to make its way there, but by then the cold air mass is moderating and we're dealing with primarily rain. So that is the Canadian model. I will show you that yesterday, the midday run did not show this particular storm track. It was much farther up to the north and east. It did have some winter weather on the back side of the storm and some winter weather on the front side in New England, but primarily rain for Pennsylvania and the Mid-Atlantic region. So quite a flip here from 12Z to 0Z. Now, I talked about the European yesterday. That model is kind of switching places with the Canadian model. And I'm going to show you here, this is early this week. And then as we go into the second part of next week, the European model continues to show low pressure. It's got it all the way down to the Florida Panhandle, though, and the cold air mass that the Canadian showed is just not really here on the European. It was on the model run before. It showed. Let me back this up a little bit for you guys. Whoops, sorry, I don't know why this did that. The model run before showed what would be a significant drop through southern Georgia and South Carolina, and a winter storm all the way into northern Georgia. However, the latest model run does not have that. In fact, it's got the low farther south, but the cold air not meeting up with it. So we've got a totally different flop. So to put any significant trust in any one operational model a week out, to me, would be foolish. I'm going to talk about the storm and show you solutions, but I'm not making an official forecast on this anytime soon. It's going to have to be next Tuesday before I can tell you for sure if you're likely to see some wintry precipitation. So obviously my headline was I'm going to call it clickbait, but it is true in that we are having a significant storm in the east, but more uncertainty than we'd like to see this far out into exactly where this storm may form. The GFS model, the 6Z run, is starting to trend a little bit colder across the eastern United States. It's kind of in between the two solutions, but it has the low pressure system. Instead of going off of the Florida coast, it's got it going off of the North Carolina coast. What this means is that Virginia and the Mid-Atlantic region are looking at primarily rain. However, it's got the lows starting to turn into a bit more of a nor'easter here. It's got rain for the big cities, which we're used to at this point in the winter, but a major snowfall across the interior of New England and heavy ice as well in parts of Maine and New Hampshire. This is the most extreme I've seen out of the GFS. If we go back a model run to the 0Z, we see that the storm it's off the coast. It's in the same spot, but the cold air mass has already retreated, and we're looking primarily at rain. So just one run of the GFS for Sunday afternoon showing rain across interior Massachusetts to the next run showing heavy snow across New York. Quite a flip in what we're seeing from model to model. So this makes me want to look more at the ensembles than any one particular solution, as we are still about a week out from this potential event. So the European ensemble, which has been a little bit more consistent than the others, shows that we get to a more favorable pattern for winter weather in the eastern United States, at least for a big storm with some cold air in place. And what's happening is a big trough moving into the western United States is intensifying the ridge here across the plains and eastern parts of the Rockies. You can see this ridge axis extending from East Texas up into Saskatchewan. And what that does is it allows colder air to spill in underneath. This is typical of a Madden-Julian oscillation going from phase 8 to phase 1. That's a Pacific circulation in the tropical Pacific. And that favors colder than typical weather and stormy weather across the eastern United States. So this is Monday of next week. And you can see the trough continues to barrel into the west with this next piece of energy that I'm watching. So it escapes underneath this ridge and allows colder air to move into the eastern United States out ahead of this storm system. These colors indicate departures from average. They don't indicate temperatures aloft. because it's going to be colder aloft in Canada than it will be in the eastern U.S. But you see, we definitely have a much stronger than typical trough over the southeast. So that's a key sign that we're going to have a storm off the southeast coast by next weekend. The big question mark is placement, and is the cold air in place? And I'm going to tell you what's changed from this time yesterday. This is the European ensemble, and it shows a significant trough here over the Newfoundland area. We call this in the weather business a 50-50 low. It's low pressure near 50 north and 50 west, which would be just east of Newfoundland. You can see that the heights are very low here. We've got a strong trough in place. However, the European ensemble is weakening that 50-50 low, which allows milder air to take over and does not pool the cold air all the way down into the northeast. So this is completely opposite from what that GFS is showing with the East Coast storm. And this is a trend I'm going to be watching for you guys. If the 50-50 low continues to weaken, then we're not going to have enough cold air to have really a significant winter storm in the east, outside of maybe the elevations of the mountains from western North Carolina up into western Pennsylvania. So that's what I'm watching for you guys. If we look at the GFS ensemble mean, we see that the 50-50 low is more intact than what we saw on the European. So the models are kind of agreeing to go separate ways, if that makes sense. However, we do have the trough here in the southeast. The only difference here between the European and the GFS is that the trough positioning on the European is digging farther south and west versus the GFS. And that means that the low pressure track will be farther south and east across the Carolinas versus what the GFS showed, and that's having something coming up the East Coast. It's showing a significant block here building across Greenland. However, the NAO is not particularly negative, so the likelihood of this turning into a nor'easter is extremely slim at this point. And this is why I think that the European and Canadian are grasping the concept of where the storm will go. They're handling the storm track much more, in my opinion, better than what the GFS ensemble has. The GFS has been way too inconsistent, whereas the European and Canadian have had this idea for several days now. This is the surface low on the European ensemble, and the average of all the low pressure tracks is just off of the southeastern coast of like Wilmington, moving up to the east of the Outer Banks. Notice it does not come right up into New England. In fact, the average of the models sends it out to sea, which is what I'm showing on my graphic here. It is intensifying the storm to a certain point, to about the benchmark, but it's heading out to sea versus curling back into Maine. So I do believe that that's going to be the case here, where we've got this low pressure kind of getting kicked out and weakening over time as the next storm barrels in over the early part of the following week of the 16th around MLK Day. So the European ensemble, which was more robust with its storm yesterday at this time. Whoops, that is not the right model. Okay, so WeatherBell just hid it from me, but we'll look at the 12Z. You can see that the significant snow mean of all the ensembles is taking every ensemble member, averaging it out, showed the most significant snow would be across the Virginias and western North Carolina. Now, fast forward to the latest model, it shows much less, meaning less cold air is in place, and maybe enough cold air for some snow across the interior northeast, which is kind of what the GFS was trying to show us here. However, the operational model of the European yesterday was buried with a big storm across Tennessee, North Carolina. I think it's overdone because this is just kind of one extreme. Because as you look at the next model run here, the 0Z, you'll see that that is completely gone. Whoops. Thank you, WeatherBell. Not completely gone, but certainly the threat for snow down here is pretty much just in the mountains, and maybe a better chance in Pennsylvania. So the European is trending towards the GFS. Now the Canadian, on the other hand, is not. It's actually trending back to what the European showed yesterday, and this is certainly something I'm still watching for you guys. The Canadian yesterday did not show any significant snow moving into the eastern United States. It just showed some mountain snow and then some snow across the northeast. The latest run of the Canadian says game on here across Virginia and North Carolina. So the two have traded places. So right now, my gut feeling is, as a forecaster, I've got to take the average of the two. And that says there can be snow here in Western Virginia, Western North Carolina, Eastern Tennessee. I don't think forecasting anything this extreme would be likely to pan out, but certainly that's the area I'm watching. I'm going to keep an eye though on New England to see if a storm does try to form and move up the coast. I think at that point it's primarily rain, but we'll keep an eye on the interior of the Northeast at this point for maybe some snow. However, I'm not forecasting a major nor'easter like what the GFS is showing here for next weekend. You can see when you've got the Canadian showing this, the European showing this, GFS showing this, just really no agreement at this point. So it's really, unfortunately, still up in the air. We're still at that, 7 to 10 day out where we're still trying to figure out where the pattern is going to be most favorable for winter weather. Later on this weekend, I'll continue to monitor the trends and see if there's going to be less likely chance of an East Coast storm, more likely chance. And I say East Coast, I mean coming up from the Carolinas to the Northeast rather than out to sea. So again, I'll keep you guys posted here in the coming days. Eye-catching title for sure, big storm for sure, but the question mark is where's it going to be big? Rain off the coast or big snow across the interior of the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic states? I'll keep you all posted. Thanks for watching. More videos coming over the weekend. Please like and subscribe and share with your friends. And I appreciate y'all's time today. I hope you have a blessed Friday. And just want to tell you guys that, I am humbled by the weather every day. I am a child of God through Christ Jesus. And I go very much off of the word of God, and that is Proverbs 3:5-8. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him that is God, and he will make your path straight. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil. This will bring health to your body and nourishment to your bones. I continue to be humbled every day by the weather. It makes me just more hungry to understand what God has given me. That's the gift to learn, the gift to share with other people the weather, and share as well Christianity, and share the light that Jesus brings to us through through the salvation that has been given to us through grace by accepting God. For me, I want to trust the Lord. I don't trust the science as much. I think it's important. I think I've been put on earth here to share what I can learn about how the earth works and how the weather pans out. But at the same time, I'm just a human being. I'm not God. I don't create the weather. I've seen the comments on here. Some of you guys obviously are skeptics. That's fine. Look, I was a skeptic as well. But at the same time, know that there is a higher power, that he produces the rains from the heaven and the snow, and that he is there to give us salvation through Christ Jesus, through Jesus Christ, John 3:16. And I have very much been humbled, but I've also appreciated everybody's understanding of where I come from, because I think that's important to you guys, to show you that I'm just a human being, a sinner like everybody else on here, but somebody who wants to give you the opportunity to accept Jesus Christ and to accept eternity in heaven. So I appreciate your time. If you are struggling in faith, I'm with you completely. That's why I put my eyes to the Lord and pray, and I want to pray for you as well. If you have any prayer requests, please share those with me. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I will try to get a video out a little bit later tomorrow morning before I head up to Richmond for the day. And please, guys, be safe out there, and God bless you. Take care.